Hello, and welcome to the 10th episode of Season 11 of The Dark Money Files, in which we shine a light into a murky world. I'm Ray Blake, and with me is my co-host, friend and business partner, Graham Barrow. Hello, Graham.
Howdy doody, Ray.
Oh, Graham, it's been a while since our last episode.
Well, Ray, it really has, and you can tell from my quite jolly voice and my lovely greeting that I'm in a good place, because it's been holiday season, and I, for one, need regular breaks, given my rather advanced years.
Yeah. Well, you've never been one to do things by halves, Graham.
Well, maybe, Ray, but I've got to tell you, ageing is one of the things I'd be delighted to do in halves. But life doesn't work that way.
No, I find myself having to agree with that, Graham, because it seems to me that both of us are working more as we get older rather than less.
And that's another reason why there's been a bit of a gap since the last episode, because we're working rather hard, but we both love what we do, and work is taking us down some very interesting paths at the moment.
It is, not least of which is our new venture, Risk Alert 247, which is also the new podcast sponsor.
Yes, it is, and it is taking off, Ray, faster than either of us could possibly have imagined. And we're currently in the process of onboarding a very large number of financial institutions onto the system, which is exciting, but it's quite time-consuming.
You don't need to tell me. And I think there's a very interesting podcast and maybe live event that we could do around how the idea for the new company arose from our work together over the last decade. You know, maybe looking at some of the criminal networks we found the hard way, first of all, and then use those discoveries to try and make the process easier.
I think that's a great idea, but I think that's for another time.
Yeah.
Excuse me. Shall we get on with today's episode?
I think so, yeah. Now, look, last time we spoke about hotspot policing and how that could be translated into our world of anti-financial crime. And today we're opening out that conversation to the more general topic of intelligence-led policing, which also resonates deeply with our community of financial crime fighters, or, well, at least it should.
Yeah, I agree. And I was really struck, Ray, by a very simple definition of intelligence-led policing, which for the sake of brevity, I think from here on in we'll refer to as ILP.
And what was that definition?
Well, quote, intelligence officers serve as guides to operations rather than operations guiding intelligence.
So proactive risk management rather than reactive.
That's exactly right.
Now, in a way, at a quite fundamental level, that's what a firm's risk appetite and enterprise-wide risk assessment is designed to do, isn't it?
In theory, yes.
I can tell you're not entirely convinced, Graham.
Well, I realise, Ray, one of the other things that comes with getting older is increasing levels of cynicism, but I have seen a great many of those risk appetites and risk assessments that look much more like they've been retrospectively designed to meet an existing business model rather than the model being designed off the back of the risk appetite and assessment.
Oh, perish the thought, Graham. I think, to be honest, that's got less to do with cynicism and more to do with recognising reality and experience, really. And I can't really find it in me to disagree with you.
Well, hooray for that, thank you. Shall we start then, Ray, by placing ILP into some sort of historical context? Its origins alone really make for an interesting subject.
Yeah, I think they do. So, back in 1994, a chap called Mark Riebling wrote a highly influential book called Wedge, The Secret War Between the FBI and CIA. Now, this laid bare the conflict that had traditionally existed between the intelligence and law enforcement communities in the US and how those rivalries had acted as a barrier. It prevented effective responses to, or even avoiding, such tragedies as the Kennedy assassination, Watergate, and, in a later addition to the book, 9/11.
So in effect, the failure to cooperate acted to prevent the sharing of intelligence and getting, in the process, a much better and bigger view of the picture.
Exactly. The failures that led to 9/11 were particularly important in leading to the acceptance of ILP, both in the US and here in the UK.
Yeah, see, once upon a time, policing was largely reactive, and this became more and more difficult, especially at times of economic restraint, when crimes tend to increase and law enforcement resources tend to be constrained or reduced.
It's difficult to run effective law enforcement when you've got fewer resources investigating ever more crimes.
Yeah, and it's easy to see the parallel, I think, with the current state of economic crime risk management. Although more resources are being applied, it isn't sustainable to just keep hiring more and more people, given that the risks are also growing at pace.
Yeah. Now, if you think about it, Graham, initially the Financial Action Task Force came into being in 1989 solely to address the global crisis in illicit drugs. Now, the failure of countless initiatives to stem the trade led to some outside-the-box thinking and looked at the laundering of cash from the sale of drugs rather than movements of and sale of the drugs themselves.
Well, exactly, Ray, and that's now expanded, especially since 9/11, to include terrorism financing, proliferation financing, dual-use goods, chemical, biological and thermonuclear weapons, PEP, sanctions, cybercrime, human trafficking, modern human slavery, and probably a whole lot else.
Yeah, all of which, or many of which, began as predicate crimes and represent exactly the same sort of challenge to law enforcement.
Yeah, except maybe PEPs, Ray.
Well, occasionally.
Now who's the cynic?
Oh, well, I think that's also down to experience, Graham. Moving on, though, because I think we should, it's interesting that one of the main issues that ILP was designed to address was that prior to its implementation, most effort was expended reacting to specific criminal activities and not enough understanding recidivism and repeat offending, where actually, if you did the analysis, much of the crime was being generated.
Yeah, so as I understand it, there was also a focus on the rather easier low-hanging fruit of local, known, small-time crooks, and less on the larger organised crime networks who, by their very nature, were harder to catch.
But more important too. And the parallels are uncanny, aren't they, really?
Well, yes, they are, and they get even more obvious when you start factoring in terrorist incidences which may have been planned and implemented from the other side of the world.
Which is exactly why you need cross-functional intelligence, as there's clearly a role for MI5, MI6 and the police in thwarting such an attack together.
There is, and for the benefit of non-UK listeners, MI5 is effectively our Homeland Security Agency, whose role is to keep the UK safe, whereas MI6 is the extra-jurisdictional intelligence service, which operates at a global level.
And if you throw into the mix the fact that we still have regional police forces, it makes for a very fragmented approach.
Yeah, and I think we're at the point in the conversation, Ray, we need to make clear that ILP is not just about gathering information.
Well, exactly, Graham. Too often people confuse the two. Intelligence is information that's been analysed to produce useful and actionable knowledge or understanding.
Yeah, one example that is quoted in the literature is the broken window theory. Solving that issue was nothing to do with arresting the people who did it. It was understanding the consequences of allowing a broken window to go without repair for an extended period of time.
Yeah, the longer you left it, the greater the likelihood that other windows would also be broken. And the more windows that got broken, the more new windows would also be broken. The same thing happened with graffiti. You can't arrest your way out of the problem, but taking trains with graffiti out of service until they were clean deprived the street artists of a gallery to show their talents. And they soon stopped.
Yes. Would it be wrong of me at this point to mention transaction monitoring, Ray?
Almost never, Graham, but in what respect this time?
Well, I was just wondering if it was akin to trying to arrest your way out of a problem.
Ah, as in reacting to a transaction after it's happened being the same as arresting someone after they've committed a crime?
Well, exactly. Now, of course, criminals should be arrested, and of course, dodgy transactions need to be identified.
Looking back to FATF's intervention in 1989, this was predicated, wasn't it, on retrospective policing. Money laundering is what comes at the end of a criminal enterprise, after the harm has been done.
Yeah, and modern transaction monitoring is the direct embodiment of this. We are looking not at what is going to happen, or even what's happening now, but instead what's already happened.
So to paraphrase our now somewhat derided former Prime Minister Tony Blair, we should instead be tough on dodgy transactions, tough on the causes of dodgy transactions.
Exactly right. Only in order to be tough on the causes of dodgy transactions, you need good intelligence. So not something you get all or often or sometimes ever in what we currently do.
Meaning that the different banks and other institutions involved in a chain of transactions are a bit like the FBI and the CIA, ostensibly on the same side, but difficult to get to work together.
Yeah, although recent events have started to shine a tiny little ray of hope on the situation.
Now, you're talking here, aren't you, about the recently announced initiative between the FCA and 7 of the biggest UK banks. They've been providing data to the NCA to help identify money laundering and other financial crimes.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. On the 26th of July 2024, the UK National Crime Agency, the NCA, issued a press release explaining that it was not just receiving suspicious transactional data from those banks, but that a joint team of investigators was working together with access to the NCA's data as well as that provided by the banks to better target serious and organised crime.
And they go on to say that since May, when the initiative went operationally live, 90 intelligence packages have been delivered in support of both NCA and UK-wide police investigations.
Yeah, and that means supporting investigations into things like organised immigration crime or fraud or money laundering.
And not just helping to support existing investigations, but providing the evidence to launch entirely new ones for previously undiscovered criminal activity.
Yeah, and it goes even further than that, Ray. The NCA says that as a direct consequence of this work, 8 new organised crime networks have been identified, which the NCA are now investigating, and 3 intelligence packages have been shared with the banks to better help them understand the threats they face and improve their defences against them.
So all in all, a classic example of ILP, turning information into intelligence through detailed and focused analysis, working cross-functionally to ensure as many potential elements involved in being used by the criminals are brought together, and then seeding those benefits amongst all concerned to drive real financial and social value from the effort.
Yeah, and done in a way, as the press release makes clear, to protect the personal data of innocent account holders by setting clear indicators of suspicious activity and only sharing that data when those indicators have been demonstrably triggered.
And I can't help thinking, Graham, that you could apply this inside firms as well, where typically siloed management means that different departments have a different view of the same customers and the same data. And because they don't tend to talk to each other and keep facts, information to themselves, it never turns into actionable intelligence.
I couldn't agree with you more, Ray.
OK. But is this the only area we can learn from ILP, Graham?
Well, I don't think it is. As we know from the formation of Risk Alert, there can be indicators right at the beginning of a relationship with a new client, especially if it's a legal entity.
But it involves subjecting the information relating to the company to analysis rather than just treating it as information.
Well, it absolutely does, Reg. Can I give you a very small example?
Please do.
Well, in a recent piece of analysis, a company I was looking at had recorded 3 different industry classification codes when it was incorporated.
Yeah, now we call those SIC codes, don't we, Graham? But elsewhere they can be referred to as NAICS codes or NACE codes.
Exactly that, and they act as a guide to the type of business the firm is going to be involved in doing.
And some, though not all, financial institutions record them at the point of onboarding.
Yes, some do, but how many actually Look at them.
Well, not many, I would wager, especially in this world of straight-through processing, where human beings tend not to see any of the information about the company unless it rings alarm bells.
Yeah, so in this case, this firm provided 3 SICK codes. Sick in all sorts of meanings of the word. So the first one was 16290, which is the manufacture of other products of wood, manufacture of articles of cork, straw and plaiting materials.
That sounds good. Yep.
Yeah. Then 46439, which is the wholesale of radio, television goods and electrical household appliances other than records, tapes, CDs and videotapes and the equipment used for playing them.
Okay.
And lastly, 47710, which is the retail sale of clothing in specialised stores.
Okay, so they've got a wood product manufacturing division, an electrical goods wholesaling division, and a clothing retailing division? No, these aren't natural bedfellows, are they, really?
Well, no. I mean, I suppose it's possible, but on a spectrum of likelihood, I think you'd say it's a significant outlier.
That's not actually the example I thought you were going to go with. I can think of an even more egregious one.
Oh, can you? Go on then.
Yeah, and we saw lots of them for a while last year.
Oh, what were they?
Okay, so there was 01460, raising of swine or pigs, 24460, processing of nuclear fuel, and remember, this is the same company, purportedly, and 46460, a wholesale of pharmaceutical goods.
Of course, how could I have forgotten those?
There were around 80 altogether. Interestingly, the last 3 digits in each case are 460, and I wonder if there was an algorithm involved there. So about 80 of them, as I say, altogether in the end. And I think we can say with a high level of assurance that they were very suspicious in pretty much every way possible.
Well, yes, they were, because as I now remember, they were all clones of existing companies, except they substituted wherever the letter I appeared in the company name with the letter L.
Exactly, which of course rendered them non-pronounceable. But of course, in straight-through processing, the computer doesn't test for pronunciation, does it? And using the intelligence-led approach, once we understood the methodology, we could start identifying them at the point of incorporation before they'd ever even approached a bank to open an account. And we did that quite successfully.
Well, we did, and it was jolly good fun. Okay, so I think that's a good place to leave the conversation, at least for now, and maybe start thinking about the next episode.
Yeah, hopefully we've left a few thinking points behind in relation to ILP for folks and how they can apply it. So, have you got anything in mind for next time?
Well, Ray, I've got a few things, and I know from our chats that you have too. But let's finish this recording, get it edited, put online, and shall we get back together again very soon to make a decision on what's next?
Oh, I'm looking forward to it.